Our story unfolds in a well-known company, where our protagonist, Lee Xiulai, at the age of 28, made a decisive decision. He chose to quit the rat race and resign from one of the top 100 companies in the country. As he packed up his belongings and prepared to leave, he was pleasantly surprised to see his friends, who had worked with him, come to see him off. His friends congratulated him and wished their team leader a bright future. Moments later, Lee Xiulai invited his friends to a 5-star hotel to throw a farewell party. During the party, one of his friends with green hair exclaimed, "I can't believe you actually resigned. It wasn't easy to reach this position, and Mr. Guo thought highly of you. Your future promotions and wealth were guaranteed." Lee Xiulai replied with a big smile, "I've made peace with myself. I want to lie flat, be a salted fish, enjoy life, and spend more time with my girlfriend. I don't want to compete anymore." A girl with blue hair asked, "What are you going to do next?" Lee Xiulai responded, "I'm planning to open a cafe, play with cats, and walk dogs." Seeing how idyllic his future sounded, the girl with blue hair got excited and said, "Wow, that's great. No more 24/7 work. You'll be your own boss. Team leader, I'm so envious of you for quitting just like that. Unfortunately, I have a mortgage and a car loan. If I don't work, I'll default on my payments." Another friend of Lee Xiulai chimed in, "When your cafe becomes successful, I'll bring clients to drink coffee there. You must give us a discount." Lee Xiulai assured them, "Don't worry, I'll treat everyone." Everyone stood up from their seats, raised their wine glasses, and toasted, "If we get rich, let's not forget each other." Sometime later, after Lee Xiulai opened his cafe, it thrived, becoming a popular local spot with its unique decor, attracting countless visitors. Lee Xiulai was filled with hope for the future, feeling that everything was going well. Standing in front of his cafe with his girlfriend, he said, "Guifen, did you know? Last month, our cafe's net profit was 100,000 yuan. He assured his girlfriend, "Guifen, at this rate, we'll recover our initial investment in just 1 more year." Guifen, amazed by Lee Xiulai's ambition, said, "Darling, you're amazing." At that time, Lee Xiulai thought that resigning and risking everything to start a trendy cafe with over 1 million yuan in investment was the best decision of his life. But then, one day, bulldozers arrived to destroy his cafe. He demanded they stop and asked, "What are you doing?" The construction manager replied, "This land has been requisitioned by our leading group. All irrelevant personnel must leave." Lee Xiulai, shocked, told them he hadn't heard anything about a demolition and demanded that they couldn't go through with it. The construction manager, Wang, told Lee Xiulai, "You should ask your landlord about this. I'm just doing my job." Another man asked, "Brother Wang, what's going on? Who's this guy?" Lee Xiulai insisted, "Hold off on the demolition. Let me clarify the situation first." The man urged him to hurry, saying, "Our project manager has a 3-day schedule for this area." In shock, Lee Xiulai called his landlord, thinking, "Landlord, you need to explain why I was told today that the property I just rented and renovated is being demolished." Brother Wang, observing Lee Xiulai, wondered, "This guy seems to have rented this place. Doesn't he know it was planned for demolition long ago?" Another worker remarked, "That's really unlucky." The landlord asked Lee Xiulai, "Didn't I tell you about this?" He then apologized, saying, "I might have forgotten because I was busy. Anyway, that's the situation now." He advised Lee Xiulai to hire a moving company to take his stuff away. Angry, Lee Xiulai demanded, "What about the money I spent on renovations and marketing?" The landlord smiled and replied, "It's demolition. There's nothing we can do. We have to follow the city's development plans. Besides, isn't demolition for the city's betterment?" Lee Xiulai, still upset, argued, "You had an obligation to inform me about the demolition before renting the place to me. Now you need to compensate me for the losses, or it counts as a breach of contract." The landlord laughed and said, "Compensate? I didn't say I wouldn't. I'll cover your moving expenses later." Brother Wang, observing the situation, remarked, "This kid seems young and inexperienced. Starting a business these days, you can't just think about making money. You have to consider all the risks." Another man agreed, adding, "Cash flow is still the most important." Fuming, Lee Xiulai accused the landlord, "You deliberately hid the information. Isn't this a scam?" The landlord, hearing this, responded, "Do you understand force majeure? Sue me if you want. Here's a piece of advice. Never skimp on hiring a lawyer. Do you even have money?" He continued, "I already gave you a big discount when you rented the place. Besides, when we signed the contract that morning, I really didn't know about the demolition. I found out in the afternoon and then got busy and forgot. Haven't you made a lot of money these past few months? The landlord then laughed and said, I'll give you an extra 10,000 yuan as compensation. That's my best offer. Li Shulai, frustrated, remembered overhearing the landlord talking to his family about spending 170,000 yuan per person on an Antarctic tour package, where the rooms below deck were supposedly uninhabitable. Yet here he was, offering only 10,000 yuan as compensation. The landlord told Li Shulai, I have urgent matters to attend to, and we'll talk about this later, and then hung up the phone. Li Shulai, furious and unsure of what to do, watched as the construction workers began their work. He angrily remarked, Do you think I'll just let you bully me like this? This is my hope, my future that I've poured everything into. I will protect it with my own hands. Afterward, he went home and made some calls to people he knew, hoping for help. However, everyone either ignored his calls or made excuses. Disappointed and at a loss for what to do, Li Shulai felt utterly helpless. Li Shulai sent a message to the landlord, asking him to at least refund the rent for the past 3 years. However, the landlord blocked him. Feeling depressed and sad, he heard his girlfriend, Guifan, call his name. Li Shulai was happy to see Guifan back, thinking, fortunately, there's still Guifan, always by my side. Guifan asked Li Shulai if he had thought of a solution. Li Shulai tried to reassure her, saying, Don't worry too much. We can start over. I calculated that selling the tables, chairs, and coffee machines could get us 100,000 to 200,000 yuan to cover urgent needs. And the landlord just needs to return the rent, giving us another few 100,000 yuan. Next time, we'll be more cautious in choosing a location. Using our previous reputation, we can open a community store. It won't be a problem to make a living. However, Guifan then brought up Zhao Lide. Li Shulai, feeling a surge of anger, asked, Is he harassing you again? Guifan shook her head and replied, No, I wanted to talk about us. I think we should break up. Li Shulai was shocked to hear this. The girl he liked, for whom he had done everything, was breaking up with him now that he had no money. He held Guifan's hands and asked her, Why? Don't you believe I can overcome this hurdle? Just give me some more time, and I'll solve this issue. I've solved my previous work problems well, and even climbed higher. Guifan moved closer to Li Shulai, speaking emotionally. I actually want to help you. Zhao Lide is very generous. I haven't agreed to be with him yet, but he already gave me a platinum bag worth tens of thousands of yuan. She showed him the luxurious bag that Zhao Lide had given her, adding, He's really generous. Surprised, Li Shulai asked Guifan, How could you accept his gift while being with me? Guifan didn't respond directly, but thought to herself, That old man Zhao Lide gave me too much. Less work, more money. Who can resist such temptation? But there's still a bit of reluctance. Shulai is capable, handsome, strong, gentle, and considerate. She then told Li Shulai, Zhao Lide, he's old, and it seems he won't live for many more years. I'll agree to be with him for now. Once I stabilize things with him, I can secretly help you. We'll just go from being public to secret. I truly love you, Shulai. You're the only one I love, being with Zhao Lide. I can also help you solve your current crisis. He promised that if I agreed to be with him, he'd immediately give me 1 million yuan. With this 1 million yuan, we could save the cafe. However, Li Shulai pushed her away, shouting angrily, Even if I'm destitute and homeless, I won't be a cuckold, relying on a woman selling her body to support me. I've seen what shamelessness is. Get lost, Guifan. Hearing this, Guifan became furious. Who wants to be with a man deep in debt, unable to afford rent? She spat, turning to leave. But before she walked away, she warned, Don't come back begging me with your head down. Li Shulai, still enraged, yelled after her, Get lost! I don't ever want to see your face again. Sometime later, it began to rain heavily. Li Shulai wandered through the streets, drenched and despondent, trying to figure out what to do next. He thought about selling his coffee machines and other items from the cafe, but the buyer told him that second-hand coffee machines these days are sold by weight. They're not worth as much as he had hoped. And those tables and chairs, how much could they sell for? Now he had nowhere to live. The house he had been renting was no longer available to him because debt collectors were causing trouble every day. They had splashed the door with red paint so many times that the landlord had kicked him out. Every day the debt collectors demanded to know when he would pay back the money, coming to threaten him relentlessly. Frustrated and disappointed, Li Shulai didn't know what to do. He returned to where his cafe had once stood, now demolished, and thought, I clearly overcame the hardest step, seized the opportunity, and succeeded in my business. Why am I encountering such a low probability event? Why am I at such a dead end? He looked up at the sky and asked, God, are you playing with me? If you want to play, then play me to death. Sitting in the middle of the construction site, he took out a cigarette and muttered to himself, I will overcome these difficulties. But it seemed that fate had other plans. The brakes of a construction crane suddenly failed, and it collapsed on top of Li Shulai. At the age of 28, Li Shulai died from being crushed by the crane, losing too much blood. Even after death, he couldn't accept his fate. He found himself watching his own body as the police and ambulance arrived, taking care of the scene. He thought, good people get good rewards. That's just a myth. In the end, it's people like me who suffer. But then something strange happened. He noticed a golden light emerging from the spot where his cafe had once stood. As he approached, the golden light grew more intense. Li Shulai covered his eyes, wondering, why is there a shimmering golden light? Suddenly, a series of notifications began popping up in front of him, saying, Project 986 initiated, Project 212 initiated, Penguin Company established, Alibaba established, Baidu established. Confused, Li Shulai wondered, is this what they call life flashing before your eyes? More notifications appeared. Beijing won the right to host the 2008 Olympics, joined the WTO, house prices skyrocketed, Shenzhou 6 launched into space, Qinghai Tibet Railway opened, and many more. These were all events he had experienced in his life, but now they seemed to matter little to him. However, it wasn't just his life events that he saw. He also saw galaxies and floating islands in space. The most shocking sight was people fighting a demon-like being. Confused, he wondered, what are these things? They're getting more abstract. As he tried to approach them, he suddenly fell into a ditch. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in a classroom, sitting next to someone. The boy sitting beside him asked if he was okay. Li Shulai looked at the boy and was shocked. Jiang Ming, are you dead too? Jiang Ming, puzzled, asked. Are you all right? Don't say such unlucky things in broad daylight. Li Shulai stood up from his seat and looked around, wondering, Asterisk, is this heaven? At least I did good deeds all my life, so let me go to heaven. Jiang Ming, confused, asked, Have you changed? Why are you even sleeping through Old Man Guo's class? Isn't it your favorite class? What's up, dreaming of being paralyzed or something? Professor Guo noticed Li Shulai and asked, Why are you suddenly standing up in the middle of class? Li Shulai was stunned upon seeing Professor Guo, because, in his previous life, Professor Guo had been a great benefactor to him. When his family was poor during his school days, Professor Guo supported him in many ways, and helped him apply for scholarships, allowing him to continue his studies. But unfortunately, good people don't always get good rewards. Professor Guo had committed suicide by jumping off a building in Li Shulai's senior year, due to false accusations from a rich second-generation girl, Zhang Shuili. Zhang Shuili had falsely accused Professor Guo of forcing her to sleep with him in order to pass her thesis defense. Professor Guo tried to explain to everyone that it wasn't true, insisting that Zhang Shuili was talking nonsense, and that he had never said such things to her. However, no one believed him. Zhang Shuili, being from a wealthy and powerful family, used her influence to trap him. Unable to bear the shame and the false accusations, Professor Guo tragically committed suicide. That's how Li Shulai's benefactor died unjustly and undeservedly, right in front of him. Seeing Professor Guo again, Li Shulai became emotional and hugged him tightly, saying, Professor Guo, I knew with your character you would definitely go to heaven. Thank you so much for nurturing me. Without your careful guidance, I wouldn't have been able to make it here. You must be ready to reincarnate, right? How many numbers ahead? I should calculate when I can reincarnate too. I wish you a good reincarnation, full of wealth and glory. Angry, Professor Guo grabbed a book and hit Li Shulai on the head. What are you talking about? Are you in a rush to reincarnate and dragging me along? How much cat piss did you drink yesterday? Jiang Ming quickly came to Li Shulai's rescue and told Professor Guo, Shulai hit his head this morning and isn't thinking clearly. You're magnanimous, so just take it as him being confused. Don't mind it. Then Jiang Ming turned to Li Shulai and asked, What's wrong with you today? Doing silly things in front of Guo Qiangguo. Hurry up and get back to your seat. Do you want to fail? See if you're dreaming or if you're in class. Surprised, Li Xiulai wondered what Zhang Ming meant. But as he looked around, he realized he was in a classroom. Shocked, he quietly returned to his seat. Zhang Ming then advised, "Go wash your face after class. I told you not to stay up late studying at night. You've studied yourself silly." Still confused, Li Xiulai wondered, "Why does heaven look like my university classroom?" He looked around to confirm what was going on and saw the school beauty, Xiaoning, sitting behind him. Surprised, Li Xiulai thought, "I never heard anything happen to her later. How did they all die so young?" However, Li Xiulai received a disdainful look from Xiaoning, the goddess of his university. Upon seeing this, he started to cry like a baby, thinking, "Even in death I embarrass myself in front of her." Seeing Li Xiulai's childish act, Xiaoning's friend remarked, "Li Xiulai, he's trying to get your attention, but he's got issues. What girl would like being pursued this way?" Li Xiulai overheard their conversation and glared at Xiaoning's friend, angered by her words. Frightened, Xiaoning's friend asked, "Why are you giving me that look?" She then turned to Xiaoning, saying, "Don't fall for a creepy guy like Li Xiulai." Xiaoning replied confidently, "Of course not, and I never will. He's just seeking attention." Zhang Ming, noticing the situation, whispered to Li Xiulai, "Sit properly. Professor Guo is watching you, and stop looking at the goddess." Professor Guo was indeed observing Li Xiulai's childish antics. Feeling the weight of Professor Guo's stern gaze, Li Xiulai's whole body started to feel cold, thinking Teacher Guo was so serious both before and after his death. As Li Xiulai's eyes wandered, he noticed the book on financial markets and investments that he had studied during his college days. Seeing so many familiar details, he began to realize, this doesn't seem like heaven, and it's too coincidental that they all died, finance and investment. This was a course I took in my third year. Unless it's the end of the world, and everyone is dead. But he quickly dismissed that thought, remembering how he died and the events that led to it. Finally, he came to a conclusion. Then it must be the most classic and common novel trope, rebirth. As he pondered this deeply, suddenly the classroom bell rang, signaling the end of class. Everyone began filing out of the classroom, leaving Li Xiulai to process the surreal situation he found himself in. After class, Zhang Ming came close to Li Xiulai and asked, "What's wrong with you? Did something happen at home? You've been out of it all class." Zhang Ming offered his support, saying, "If something's wrong, tell me. I'll do what I can to help. A nightmare shouldn't make you this distracted. This must mean something happened at home." He handed Li Xiulai 100 yuan, saying, "Don't worry too much. All problems will be solved." However, Li Xiulai refused, saying, "I can't take this. It's enough for a month's living expenses." Zhang Ming insisted, "Don't worry, we're like brothers. I have plenty of living expenses. Even after giving you this, I still have over 400 left." Seeing Li Xiulai still hesitating, Zhang Ming told him, "Consider it an investment. You can pay me back when you become rich. My dad told me your parents' small business has a lot of potential. If my parents kick me out for being wasteful, I can come to you." Reluctantly, Li Xiulai accepted the money, saying, "I'll take this as a loan, and I'll pay you back double when I have the money." Zhang Ming smiled and said, "Don't worry too much. Just eat more meat today." Later that night, in their college dorm, Li Xiulai found himself unable to sleep. He was still thinking about how he had returned to his third year of college, back in 1998. Whatever the reason, he felt like he had hit the jackpot. He remembered when he died, passing through the darkness. Those events' timelines, from recent to distant, were all etched in his mind. That must have been time travel, he thought. But why were there also scenes of monks fighting and floating islands? Other dimensions. He decided to forget about the strange visions, focusing instead on the information gap he could now exploit. Li Xiulai began laughing quietly to himself, remembering the future events he knew were coming. Hearing Li Xiulai laughing in the middle of the night, Zhang Ming got irritated and said, "Are you still not sleeping? What are you laughing at under the covers? The bed frame is creaking nonstop. It's annoying." Li Xiulai apologized and promised to sleep quietly. But he couldn't help but smile, knowing there was still time to change everything. Zhang Ming, worried about Li Xiulai, thought, "He's been distracted all day, looking like he owes millions. And now he's laughing after being scolded at night. Hopeless." Li Xiulai finally drifted off to sleep, thinking, "Heaven gave me a second chance." A new life. I must work harder than before. I have to help those I couldn't help in the past. I can't watch them repeat the same fate. He made up his mind that those who had made his previous life a living hell would not get the better of him this time. In this life, he vowed, I won't repeat those mistakes. I'll seize every opportunity this era brings and become the richest man. The next morning, in the study room, since Li Xiulai has been reborn and given a fresh start, he decides that he needs to plan carefully for the next few years. Starting in 1998, China's economy is set to undergo a major transformation. After certain policies in 2003, housing prices will skyrocket. But there's a big problem. His family's savings aren't enough to afford a house. And without initial capital, flipping houses is impossible. Stock market investments, the internet, and technology exports. None of these are viable options right now. Even though he has been reborn, the start is still like hell mode, where he must begin everything from scratch. To turn things around and multiply his assets, capital accumulation from 1998 to 2003 is crucial. However, he doesn't have to worry too much, as he can use the information gap to offset the disadvantage of lacking starting capital. Thinking about this, he starts to laugh. Zheng Ming calls out to him, asking, "What are you thinking about? You've been acting strange since yesterday." Li Xiulai quickly covers the book, where he has written everything about the major future changes. Zheng Ming glances at it and asks, "What's the secret? 2003, 1998, finance, computers. What, are you changing majors? Isn't finance a great major? You'll be a trader." Li Xiulai shakes his head, saying, "No, I'm not planning to change my major. I'm just planning ahead for jobs since my family's situation isn't great." Zheng Ming confidently tells Li Xiulai, "With your grades, at worst, you'll get into a bank. That's a secure job. Be content." Upon hearing this, Li Xiulai remembers that in his previous life, after graduating from college, he applied for a bank job. The bank manager told him that, while he was satisfied with him, all the slots were full. Li Xiulai had really wanted to work at a bank after graduation. But back then, the recruitment process wasn't transparent. Without any connections, he was directly eliminated. Li Xiulai then says to Zheng Ming, "I think your dad is right. My parents' small business indeed has good prospects. But they think farming is easier and want to go back to it. I'm trying to figure out how to persuade them." Li Xiulai knows that Zheng Ming's dad was right. If his parents had persisted in their business in his previous life, they wouldn't have made a fortune, but they could have become moderately well off. Instead, they gave up after 3 years and returned to farming. Fortunately, the farming turned out well. His dad was clever. And while they didn't achieve significant prosperity, they were never hungry. Seeing Li Xiulai so confident, Zheng Ming says, "I'll talk to my dad and analyze the prospects. We'll use practical theories to help persuade your parents. Don't worry too much." Li Xiulai feels a wave of relief and happiness, saying, "That's great." But Zheng Ming adds, "My dad is quite busy now. The downtown restaurant we just opened isn't stable yet, and he's tied up with that." Upon hearing this, Li Xiulai remembers that in his previous life, Uncle Zheng had done well in business, but later offended someone, leading to bankruptcy. Zheng Ming disappeared after that. He still recalls the moment when Zheng Ming, in tears, told him he was leaving the city, saying, "I don't know when we'll meet again, but you must succeed. I believe in you. You can do it." Li Xiulai didn't expect Zheng Ming's fate to be so tragic in his previous life. So, he gives Zheng Ming some advice. When growing a business, it's essential to keep liquid funds, avoid breaking the capital chain, and be wary of petty people. Your dad is a good man, but he speaks straightforwardly. I've heard that business is like a battlefield. One misstep, and you could fall into someone's trap. Be careful. Zheng Ming, hearing this, laughs and says, "You're talking like an old man. Don't worry too much. My dad surely knows these things. We don't need to stress. Come on, class is over. Let's go to the bathhouse." Seeing Zheng Ming so carefree and happy, Li Xiulai thinks, if I tell him now that his dad's business will fail, he'll think I'm cursing them. In the future, he needs to keep an eye out for this petty person and help them when necessary. After all, Zheng Ming never looked down on his poor family for 3 years. He always ordered extra food when they ate in the cafeteria, pretending he couldn't finish it and then giving it to Li Xiulai. Knowing Li Xiulai's family's situation, he often found excuses to give him money, saying, "You think I'm lending you money for free? When you're rich, I'll charge you high interest." He had protected Li Xiulai so much before. Now, it was Li Shulai's turn to protect him. Later that night, in the student bathhouse, while taking a bath, Li Shulai was deep in thought. With my current skills and family background, standing out in the finance industry is tough. In his previous life, without a degree from a prestigious school, he couldn't find a good job after graduation. Fortunately, he had decisively switched to the computer industry. And after years of persistence and effort, he had made some achievements in programming. Now, he needed to pick up his old trade and seek opportunities in the internet sector because, in the coming years, the internet would rapidly develop and many prominent figures would emerge. As long as I seize the opportunity, I can ride on others' success and become a winner. He recalled that in 1999, Yang Feilong would establish Feilong Technology in Hangsha City, just 8 months away. Isn't this the first opportunity delivered to me? He thought. With his skills from a few years later, he'd be a top programmer now. If he could secure a position at Feilong Technology, his assets would surely multiply. Once he had accumulated initial capital, he could go further and climb higher. With this, he could not only rewrite his own destiny, but also change China's destiny, making it a dominant global power. Suddenly, he noticed that his soap had slipped from his hands. As he bent down to pick it up, he felt a sudden coolness. Turning his head back, he saw Zhang Ming standing behind him, smiling. The soap fell on the floor. "Why aren't you picking it up?" Zhang Ming asked. Li Shulai quickly stood up without even picking up the soap. Li Shulai told Zhang Ming, "Don't speak in riddles. I'm a straightforward guy." Zhang Ming laughed, saying he was just joking. He grabbed his clothes and headed out for his shower, telling Li Shulai, "Take your time showering." But suddenly, Li Shulai noticed a golden light emerging from Zhang Ming's body. Startled, he shouted, causing Zhang Ming to turn back in surprise. "What's wrong?" Zhang Ming asked. The golden light began to flow into Li Shulai's body, leaving him in shock. What is this golden light? He wondered. Then he remembered that in his previous life, just before he died, he had seen this same golden light at the cafe. It was the same light he saw while time traveling. Li Shulai called out to Zhang Ming, asking, "Have you noticed any golden light on you?" Zhang Ming, confused, asked, "What are you talking about? What light? Is it Ultraman's light? I don't see any golden light on you. Have you been watching too much TV?" He then told Li Shulai, "Don't startle me like that. You scared me." Li Shulai looked at his hand, but the golden light had vanished. Confused, he wondered if it was some kind of illusion brought on by his time traveling. Zhang Ming, noticing that Li Shulai had been acting strangely lately, advised him, "Just take a good shower and relax. If it doesn't get better, let's go to the school clinic tomorrow for a checkup." However, Li Shulai remained puzzled, still wondering what exactly the golden light was. Sometime later, at the college cafeteria, Zhao-Ning's friend asked her, "Have you noticed that Li Shulai hasn't been around much lately? We used to run into him all the time." Zhao-Ning, noticing how much her friend was talking about Li Shulai, responded, "You seem to care about him a lot. If he appears, he appears. If he disappears, he disappears. It's none of my business." Her friend shook her head. "It's not like that. I think he's realized he can't get your attention, so he's found a new target." Xiaoning also found this strange, because Li Shulai used to ask about her often. Whatever elective she chose, he would choose too. He would even come to the library when she went. He was always present in class, sitting in noticeable spots to catch her attention. But now, he often skips class, and even when he does attend, he sits in the back reading other books. What is he up to? Xiaoning wondered. As she was thinking about this, her friend nudged her, saying, "Xiaoning, look! Speak of the devil! There he is! The big romantic has turned into a bookworm. Is he preparing for graduate exams?" They both saw him approaching, deeply engrossed in his notes, planning and writing about future opportunities he knew of. He couldn't afford to wait 8 months to approach Yang Feilong. It would be too late by then. Yang Feilong's business empire had overlooked some key issues in its early stages. And Li Shulai needed to identify these problems as soon as possible. He was so absorbed in his thoughts about future events that he didn't even notice Xiaoning and her friend. Xiaoning, seeing him like this, thought, "So he's playing hard to get with me. Some people just can't change their habits." Li Shulai was so focused on his book that he didn't see her and accidentally bumped into her. Xiaoning's lunchbox fell to the ground, spilling its contents. Angrily, she confronted him. "Are you pretending not to see us? We didn't even move, and you bumped into us!" Li Shulai quickly apologized, saying he didn't mean to. but Xiaoning was too upset. She snapped, "How long are you going to stalk me like this? Don't try to get my attention with these tactics. I don't fall for hard-to-get games. Do you know how much trouble and annoyance this behavior causes?" Li Shulai picked up the lunchbox from the floor and apologized again, admitting it was all his fault.